Hello there, and welcome to this round two review of the Wheelchair Rugby League World Cup. I'm your host, Super Saiyan Blue Lucario, so grab a cup of tea and join me as we dive into the second round of action. First, Group A, England versus Spain. England got off to a flying start. A soft pass out wide to Jack Brown, who raced away to score unopposed in the first minute of the game. But a mistake from the restart gave Spain a chance close to England's line, and Gonzalez was able to evade the tackles to score 6-4. Spain showed they were here to play. They were threatening England's lines and really throwing themselves into the collision, while Jack Brown crossed again after a burst through the defence. England, for the second time, failed to deal with the restart. Good play saw Monedero in the corner with a superb finish. It was end-to-end stuff. Both sides throwing the ball around with finesse, huge hits knocking people out of their chairs. But a break from Halliwell before a lovely cutout pass from Brown found James Simpson in space to finish out wide. Quick movement again from England by Halliwell and Brown before Boardman was able to cross in the corner as well. The game kept up its relentless pace. Both sides traded chances before again Halliwell burst through to score. Hawkins then came off the bench for England for immediate impact. Fast hands sending him away to sprint down and score his first of the game. Collins then came off the bench and found a great miss-out pass of Boardman's second, and England began to assert dominance. Brown and Hawkins again combined to bring England's 40 points up as they began to starve the Spanish of possession, continuing to pick up the speed. Straight from the restart, the same combination, as Hawkins showed blistering speed to get away again. It was 50-10 at the break. A knock-on to start the second half gave England good ball, and substitute Roberts scored as the ruthless nature of England continued. A couple of errors in good position did give Spain a let-off, but it was only a temporary reprieve. Hawkins going close before Roberts battered through the posts to crash over. King was next on the score sheet after some superb evasive skills from Collins, but Spain did manage to score a penalty to earn themselves a breather from the juggernaut. Wasn't to last very long, though. A scrappy period of play did follow, with some mistakes right in the Spanish line, before Joe Coyd was able to cross. Coyd get his second minutes later after deft hands, and England were having some fun. Rigby scored with a diving effort before phenomenal hands saw Hawkins in again. Roberts pounced on a loose Spanish error before Hawkins added his fifth to bring up a century of points. England in a dominant mood and again in front of a record crowd as they now secure their place in the semi-finals. The player of the match was Richard Hawkins. Could have gone to anyone in England's shirt, but Hawkins was untouchable. Ruthless speed, the Spanish just couldn't live with it. Next, Australia versus Ireland. And there were danger signs evident very early as Australia brought the same speed and intensity that they did against England. Two quick scores put the Irish on the back foot. They did manage to build some pressure of their own for an intercept from Bailey McKenna, who raced away to score. The Irish weren't to be undone, though, getting the ball back, and quick hands saw Phil Roberts cross in the corner to bring them right back into the contest. And they sensed something building. A neat kick behind the defence saw McCarthy score, and all of a sudden it was a 6-point ball game. This was as good as it got. Quick movement from Grove restored Australia's advantage as Ireland struggled with the pace of the game, and 3 scores in the final 5 minutes of the half took the game completely away from them. They couldn't handle the pace and power of the Australian attack. The second half began as the first ended, a quick Australian score, and at this point, Ireland were just trying to play for pride and to keep the score down. The passes just weren't sticking for them. We went close with Roberts and Johnston, but were unable to crack through. McCarthy went close but couldn't retain his balance and dropped the ball in the act of scoring. The second half was quite a battle, but again, Grove was able to break the resistance with a breakaway score that took the win completely out of the Irish sails. It was swiftly followed up by a double from Luff off the back of substitute Kareem's quick hands, before Ireland were able to salvage some pride. McCarthy in good position to take a Johnston offload to get Ireland's third of the game, before Australia saw it out with tries from McKenna and Kareem. Ireland battled away and probably deserved a closer scoreline than it was actually given, but Australia really did find their groove and they bounced back from that round one defeat. They now go into their clash with Spain with renewed confidence to try and claim a semi-final spot. Player of the match for me was Grove. Australia were good across the field, but just as Ireland were coming back into things, Grove was always on hand to give the Wheelaroos the ascendancy and turn the game around and just snuff out any fight back available. Now, Group B. France versus Scotland. With what France did to Wales in game one, I was genuinely worried for Scotland, but the Scots came with a game plan to really get in the faces of the French and really try to bring some physicality and play the game at their own pace. Despite those big hits early on, though, the French showed their class and scored off the first set with Clausel. This didn't deter the Scots, who from the restart forced France behind their own in-goal area to gain a good attacking position. The French tried to match the physicality, getting up and close and personal to Scotland with some big hits of their own, but the Scots were using this to their advantage. Mellon nearly sent Young away down the left edge with a superb offload and took a heavy knock for his trouble. The Scots were inventive in attack, but the final pass just wasn't sticking for them, much like against the US. The French tried to be clever with early kicks, but were blocked by charge downs, and it was only desperate defence of Scotland getting hands in the way to block the final ball that was keeping the French at bay, but it wasn't enough. Clausel weaved his way over again to make it 10-0. Scotland tried to press at the kickoff and took out the post, trying to make a tackle, while Willems was forced out of his chair trying to tag up and had to go off with a shoulder injury. Scots were really getting in the faces of the French and forced some uncharacteristic errors, trying to find their own way of the line. It was a marked improvement from their performance in the US game. Good scrambling defence managed to deny the French in the corner, but you had to think just how long could the Scots last. Great offloading from Blackmore and Mellon found Young out wide, and Scotland were finally on the board, and it was only a 4-point ball game. France, though, responded immediately, blasting forward with quick play the balls and short passes with fast support, regained their 10-point lead. The French were tearing down the left-hand side touchline before a massive hit from Grant, which was deemed illegal as a push. France crossed straight from the penalty with swift hands out wide to Vargas. Scotland again tried to disrupt and slow the French down. Deliberate penalties for offside, but it just wasn't working. Vargas tearing through a big gap in the middle to score. A deceptive restart, though, saw Mellon regather for Scotland, and he sent Grant away, only to be denied just short of the line. The French began to get frustrated with the Scottish tactics. Things started to get fiery. Both sides began to start getting a bit niggly with each other. Myrtles nearly scored, but was deemed to have knocked on into the posts. Then the French went for an early kick on tackle one, and Abassi raced away to score. Another score swiftly followed as France worked the numbers lightning fast and Gotadoro evading the tackles to score before Clausel completed his hat-trick, shortly after hitting the ball at pace off a quick play the ball. A big hit from Mellon was able to stop Abassi from scoring a certain try in full flight, who then took a cheap shot in retaliation. The Scots started to exploit this, as the French were clearly rattled, and they created their own chances. They just couldn't quite find the final pass to score. Abassi nearly scored off a death kick behind, but he couldn't hold on to the ball, and Scotland able to survive again. Mellon nearly scored off a neat kick, but unfortunately bundled into touch. And then the French scored on the stroke of half-time with Clausel after a lovely in-and-out movement and went the length of the field to bring up 50 at half-time. The Scots came out firing in the second half, and but for a forward pass, had nearly scored off the first play. The French made them pay. Abassi knocking on... No, sorry. The French nearly made them pay. Abassi knocking on under pressure from Grant. Mounts did eventually cross, the French exploiting the slow defence with pace to score out wide, while Scotland landed a drop goal. The French was holding back in defence a little bit. After some good movement with the ball, all things good for Scotland coming through Mellon. They continued to build some pressure, but once again, the final pass was letting them down. It was a similar story to the US game, and like that one, they were made to pay, as Panea tore through a broken defence to score. Verdi added another, quickly followed by Abassi, but Scotland wouldn't go away. The impressive Mellon diving over after a neat tip-on close to the line by Blackmore. They nearly added a third for Mellon, but unfortunately he knocked on over the line. France then went straight up the other end and scored with Vargas, punishing the error. The French showed a lot of ill discipline late on, giving away numerous penalties as the Scots continued to get under their skin, before Grant added a third for the Scots, and then a late penalty for an offload to give the score a moderately respectable look. The Scots can be proud of their efforts, and they really took it to the French, who didn't like the aggressive play of the Scottish. Aggressive play seems to be a way to get to the French, which, if they meet Australia in the semis, could potentially see a big upset on the cards if they don't handle it better than they did against Scotland. The player of the match for me is Arnaud Vargas. He was completely untouchable by the Scots, who really struggled to contain him and the speed of the game. Finally, USA versus Wales. Wales needed a big response from their demolition at the hands of France, and they came out firing. A penalty off the first kickoff gave them a chance, but unfortunately the pass was dropped. The US tried to attack, going for the short kick over the top, but the Welsh were alert after watching the Scotland game back, and a mistake at the play of the ball saw the attack come to naught. Neither side could really settle and were making errors in good position. The Welsh were definitely guilty of overplaying when chances were presented, while the US were making errors trying to play quickly out of their own half. Off the back of another error, a kick again early in the tackle count, and Townsend crossed for the first score of the game. A mistake from the restart, though, and Wales had an opportunity to get right back in. Another error, though, led to another early kick, and Johnson was the first to arrive to extend the US lead. A cruel bounce took the ball away from the Welsh chaser. Wales forced an error from Wolof and exposed the US defence, unable to scramble with good hands before a neat dummy to find Priest to score. And it was 10-6, the Welsh right back in the game. The game went end to end and physical impacts, but the US going for the early kick once again. Townsend sprinting away to arrive first. All of a sudden, 16-6, you started to think maybe an upset on the cards. The Welsh then eventually found themselves in good ball, but it seemed to be just one-up carries with no backing up, no support, when a tip-on could have found some real joy against some slow defence. Eventually, they did crack the defence, though, with Williams, as finally they backed up the runner and crossed to reduce the gap to 4 points. They nearly levelled it with swift movement to their left, but support runners overran and they couldn't make it pay. The Welsh took the lead, though, and finally, after quick passing off the back of a US error, and then built in confidence, moving very quickly downfield before the defensive line opened wide for Halsey to cross over. The US began to play panic rugby, which was causing more errors as they desperately tried to stem the tide, but Wales were well organised and defended solidly. Wolof then managed to evade some tackles to dive over and bring the US right back in the contest after some poor attempted tackles, but the US were guilty of the exact same thing on the stroke of half time. Wales managed to extend it back to an 8-point game, 30-22 at the break. The Welsh scored early in the second half through Harry Jones, who dived in at the corner for the perfect start. The US was still trying the early kicks, but this time Wales were completely alert and began to press their advantage. Good hands from the US saw Townsend cross again after a penalty failed to find touch to the Welsh. The contest was back on, but the US again showed their naivety in defence, exposing as Johnson was too focused on shouting that he'd made a tackle with a tag. The Welsh played the ball quickly, and Priest crossed in the corner to extend the Welsh lead once more. They pushed on after this, and a wonderful cut-out pass sent Higgins in again as Wales started to assert themselves a little more and pull clear. A disallowed try for a forward pass nearly brought 50 up for the Welsh off a really, really nice move before Trig Turner, then, like a magician, appeared out of a tackle out of nowhere to cross with 13 minutes on the clock. Townsend got a breakaway score to give the US some late hope, but the Welsh maintained their composure and were able to grind out the clock for a win. Player of the match, Stuart Williams for Wales. His experience really helped guide Wales around the park and was a calming influence in a rather chaotic game. So what does that mean for the final group games? Well, England are through to the semi-finals with 2 wins from 2, and face an Ireland side now eliminated, unfortunately, from the competition. They'll be playing more for pride. England will be looking to maintain momentum, probably try a few new combinations with some players who haven't had as much game time to try and find their best side ahead of the semi-finals. The Irish, they'll be plucky. They'll give what they can. And I think they will potentially challenge England, who might not be completely as ruthless as they were against Spain, knowing the fact that the job is already done. But they'll want to play as best as they can to maintain some momentum for the semis. So it could either be a huge score, or we could maybe see the look of the Irish going on. The second game of Group A, Australia-Spain, however, is the one where everything is on the line, as the winner of this game will make the semi-finals. The heavy defeat for Spain by England means a draw would be enough to send Australia through on points difference itself. So the pressure's going to be more on the Spanish. They do have the quality, though, with Theo Gonzalez to be able to overturn the Australians. But it's a matter of, will the Australians be able to back up their performance against Ireland? They are building in confidence and are looking good, buoyed by a stern effort against the English. Semi-final at stake, which will likely play the world champions. Group B, we have France against the USA. Group B has a lot more to play for. The French are through. They are in the semi-finals and will play either Australia or Spain in their semi-final. So they could afford to ease off a little, which could play crucially into the outcome of this group, as any one of 3 teams could qualify yet. The US will need a big performance. They'll need to, if they can get a result, a win or a draw in this game, they go through. The likelihood of that happening is very remote, especially after the defeat to the Welsh. But if they can contain the score, points difference could be key. Wales play Scotland in the other game, and while the Welsh have had the joy in those recent encounters, Scotland play pretty well against France and may give the Welsh a run for their money, knowing that a win could be enough. A heavy defeat for the US and a win for Scotland would see them qualify. Wales need to just win the game. They can't rely on points difference, as they weren't able to reduce their arrears enough with then a narrower win over the US than was expected. So they'll need to be on top form, but will take a lot of confidence from their win over the United States as they try to make the semi-finals to face England on Sunday. That is for this week's round 2 matches. The round 3 review will be up in a few days, as the final group games coming thick and fast on Wednesday and Thursday. Let me know in the comments, which game did you enjoy the most? Were you surprised by any performances? Who do you think will take those last 2 semi-final spots? Let me know as well. But thank you all so much for watching. I've been your host, Super Saiyan Blue Lucario. And until next time, it's time for me to have a cup of tea.